practice what I preach. So I kind of just broke things up and had you guys do some talking and not me talking and all that. That's one of the most important things I would say. You know, as Laura said earlier, presenting material in more than one way, but also stopping and changing what you're teaching every 20 minutes. Remember, you'll lose 80% of your student audience after the first 20 minutes of lecturing. It's really hard for me to get faculty, and I know some of your classes are more lecture than others and a variety of things like that, but it's really hard for me to get faculty to sometimes stop and lecture because they have the pressure of, I have so much I am required to cover for the next course in the sequence or the series. So I really want you to encourage to think about what you could do to do that. And I also would say set a timer, because I can be as guilty as anybody. I don't know that 20 minutes went by sometimes. And if you set a timer, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I've got to stop what I'm doing, regroup this group, and then go back and then come back to it. It doesn't mean you have to, it doesn't mean you can't lecture a total of maybe, 40 minutes in a class. But if you break it up with things and activities and things going on throughout your lecture, you will engage students much more.
Molly, can I interject something?
Please, go for it.
One thing I read is really, I was guilty of it, is that as instructors, when we ask, does anyone have a question? Or if we ask a question, we tend to answer it and move on too quickly. But if we wait till it's painfully uncomfortable, somebody will finally speak if we just wait long enough, and then they get used to it.
That's a really good strategy. There's two things with there. Like what I learned a couple of times with clicker technology, a student will have a question, and sometimes I know faculty will do this. Does anybody else have the same question? Just a quick yes or no. Or you could raise your hands, yes. Anybody else have the same question? And then is this a global thing we all have to answer? Or is this something just this one student needs to know and maybe we should deal with that later? It's that kind of simple question. Does anybody else have the same question? I also would say when people ask a question, I think we've talked about this before, but I'm not sure. I always repeat it back. And I repeat it back for two reasons. And I would ask you guys what the two reasons are, but you probably already know. One of them is I want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, right? I want to make sure I really know what you're asking, because sometimes I miss that. And I miss it, especially whether I can't hear well or something like that. And second, I want to repeat it back because half the other students didn't hear it either. So you can go on and on and on answering somebody's question, but nobody else really knows what the context is for that because it's not on a slide, it's not in the notes. All of a sudden you're on something else. So those are really important strategies. Okay, next one. This is a strategy you could do after 20 minutes of lecturing if you insist upon lecturing, which would be like the muddiest point. It can use at the end of a topic or before moving on to a new material. And what the question is what is the muddiest point in today's material? What part did you not get? And they can either tell up here in the room, they can jot it down and hand it up to the teacher anonymously, but it's an immediate way to assess, where are we getting stuck here? Are they listening? And if they know that they're going to be asked to do this, they may actually be taking better notes or paying more attention during the lecturing time. So it's a great activity if you have never tried it. The next part of my section here is going to go on talking a little bit about note-taking and different strategies for note-taking. So any questions on some of the lecture strategies I just mentioned? I have another one I'll talk about a little bit later.
I do want to interject one thing, and I hate to be the only one. On the Muddiest Point, I've seen it used as exit tickets, and I've used that myself, and it's pretty effective, and then it also is a way of getting a formative assessment attached to it.
Explain what you mean by an exit ticket.
Basically, you're doing the Muddiest Point. You can do it like that. And so before they leave class, if it's a face-to-face or, on a weekly basis, if they're online, they actually have to answer what was, it could be something like, what did you find the most interesting? What is something you shared with somebody else this week? Or what is the muddiest point, as you say? What don't you still understand at the end of the week? So it's not a lot of questions, but just enough to give you a glimpse and to get them to be reflective.
What I was asking, exactly. And what the exit tickets, I've heard some people say, like, if you want to leave the class, you have to hand this in. So it's like a ticket too. So there's like, you might end a few minutes early, and maybe some people will rush through, but then other people stay behind in the class, and then you get to find out who's really struggling, which maybe you don't know otherwise. By ending a little bit early, giving that opportunity to do that. I would also, encourage you, students can write it down, They could send you an email. They could text you. A lot of people are using like Twitter and texting and other kinds of social media to kind of get at stuff like that. So I encourage you to think about multiple ways that people could express that, because writing it down may not be the easiest way. And they may also not know, I'm sorry, immediately what the muddiest point is, but they might know later on. So giving them an opportunity to do that at another point.
I think those are all great points. And then I forgot, somebody like Mazur, he uses it before your lecture. So say they did if you did the flipped classroom, you could use, even though maybe it's an entrance ticket, you would use it in reverse. And that way you know how to form your lecture that's coming up based on the questions that you have.
Right. I mean, it kind of puts you on the fly at that moment in time, but you're exactly right. Yeah, you can review some points that you went over last time. Yeah. Great.